I'm a licensed therapist, and I once helped a woman who was repeatedly trying to end her life after divorcing her abusive ex-husband. Later, she started dating her childhood friend and specially reached out to thank me. I generously offered my congratulations. Rose, congrats on your new start. She gripped my hand gratefully, tears welling up in her eyes. Grace, I wouldn't be here today without you. Thank you for saving me. But the moment I saw her boyfriend, my smile froze. She asked in surprise, you know each other? I nodded, yeah, he's my husband. Grace, with your help and encouragement, I finally mustered the courage to start a new relationship. He's my childhood friend, you could say we're like childhood sweethearts. I guess this is what people mean by destiny. I received this message from my client, Rose, while I was searing steak in the kitchen. I quickly wiped my hands and replied, congrats. So glad you finally found happiness. She sent several more messages in a row. It's all thanks to you. You're my lifesaver. I wouldn't be here today without you. I never thought I could move on and find love again. Grace, are you free this weekend? I'd like to take my boyfriend and treat you to a casual meal. Could you please just give us your blessing? This weekend? I stopped what I was doing and thought about it. I had planned to take my daughter Coco to the amusement park with my husband Oliver, but he said he had a business trip out of town. As of now, I didn't have any other plans. However, being a therapist is a special profession. Even though I didn't mind going out with her privately, I could only politely decline. I appreciate the thought, but no need for a meal. When you get married, I'll definitely send a gift. She replied with a sad emoji. Okay then, I hope there's a chance to introduce you two in the future. Oh, my husband said he's been under a lot of stress lately and might need counseling too. Husband? The term changed so quickly. Looks like things are moving fast for them. I was actually quite happy for her. I just sent a random emoji and put down my phone, not continuing the conversation. The steak in the pan was a bit burnt because I didn't flip it in time. Suddenly, I felt a mess inside. I am a meticulous person about everything. I don't allow any mistakes in my life, not even when searing a steak or making dinner. So I simply threw it away and seared a new one. Checking the time, my husband should be home around now. Today was our 5th wedding anniversary. I had Aunt take our daughter Coco to my mom's house in advance, hoping for a long-awaited evening just the two of us. In the 5 years of marriage, except for the first year when there was some novelty. The rest of the time, he was always distant towards me. He was a sales manager at a trading company, often working late or traveling for business. Sometimes there were exhibitions abroad, and he would be gone for 10 days or half a month at a time. As for me, I was a licensed therapist and had opened a studio that combined online and in-person counseling. The busyness of work and success in my career kept my life sufficiently fulfilling and allowed me to maintain both financial and mental independence. So, I wasn't overly dependent on him. We respected each other and supported each other. We gave each other trust and enough freedom. It was a kind of marital relationship that I found very comfortable. He said he felt the same way. After being busy all night, I finally finished searing the steak. I opened a good bottle of red wine, lit a few candles, and placed the cake and gift next to them to enhance the atmosphere. Yep, absolutely perfect. I casually took a photo and posted it on social media. Rose, my client, liked it instantly and commented, Grace, your relationship with your husband is still so good after so many years of marriage. It's really admirable. I twitched the corner of my mouth and smiled, replying to her, what's there to envy? Didn't you also find true love? We should all be happy. Thinking about it made me quite emotional. Rose was a client I met 2 years ago. She divorced her abusive ex-husband, and the divorce process was so agonizing and lengthy that she developed a severe psychological trauma. She also suffered from severe depression. During the hardest times, she said that as soon as she closed her eyes, she could see her ex-husband's angry face, screaming fiercely that he would kill her whole family if she dared to divorce him. She was so scared that she would break out in a cold sweat all over, unable to close her eyes all night. Even after the divorce, she was still constantly on edge, afraid to date, afraid to consider remarriage, and even afraid to have any contact with men. I was with her through those dark days. Now, she finally plucked up the courage to start a new relationship. This feeling was like walking through darkness and standing in the sunlight again. As her therapist, how could I not be happy for her? The meaning of salvation is not just about pulling others out of the darkness, but also about saving oneself to varying degrees in the process of salvation. For example, I learned to appreciate things more because of her experience. Although my husband Oliver and I are an ordinary couple, we always understand each other deeply, which makes me feel incredibly secure. My phone rang. My thoughts were pulled back. Hey, honey, are you home? Not yet. A shipment was sent incorrectly, and the client is in a hurry. I need to go back to the office to double-check the order. Don't wait for me for dinner, I might be busy very late. Oh, come on, can't you? Hello? Hello? He hung up. Disappointment instantly surged like a tide, almost drowning me, but I refused to let myself be surrounded by negative emotions. I simply set that social media post to be visible only to myself, no longer looking at everyone's comments and well wishes, feeling somewhat ironic about it. As I blew out the last candle, I suddenly received a call from Aunt. Ma'am, Coco has a fever. I'm taking her to the hospital now. Can you or your husband come as soon as possible? My heart instantly tightened. I grabbed my bag and car keys and rushed to the hospital. My daughter Coco had always been weak, and with the recent spread of viruses, this was her third fever this month. After being busy for most of the night, my daughter's fever finally went down. I carefully placed her back in the hospital bed, tenderly wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes, and got up to stretch my arm that she had been lying on, making it numb. Ma'am, you should rest. I'll watch her, Aunt said, massaging my neck and shoulders. You held her like that all night, it looks exhausting to me. I can't help it. Kids get clingy when they're sick, they only want their mom at times like this. I replied to her while looking at my phone. Although it was already past midnight, I still wasn't sleepy at all. What's going on? It's so late, and my husband hasn't called or sent a single message. Doesn't he find it strange that neither of us is home? I called him, but no one answered. Called again. Still no answer. Could he really be working overtime at the office until this late? Maybe his phone died? I mumbled to myself as I walked out of the ward, but I bumped into Rose at the entrance of the restroom. What are you doing here? We asked almost at the same time. I smiled and briefly replied, my daughter had a fever, so I brought her to the emergency room. She exchanged a few pleasantries and pulled me aside, lowering her voice as she said, Grace, I'm pregnant. What? I was surprised for a moment, but quickly regained my composure. That's great news. Aren't you and your boyfriend getting married soon? Yes, but I'm not sure if I can keep this baby, she replied, lowering her voice somewhat awkwardly. Tonight, he was a bit reckless, which caused me to have some bleeding. The doctor said there are signs of a threatened miscarriage. He's very remorseful and scared, which is why he brought me to the emergency room in the middle of the night. But actually, it's my fault too. I didn't even notice that I hadn't had my period for over 2 months. When it comes to adult matters, those who understand, understand. And they were in the throes of love, so it was understandable. As an outsider, I couldn't ask too many questions, so I could only comfort her to take care of herself and relax. Since she was staying in the hospital for observation that night, she kept chatting with me throughout the night, saying that her boyfriend was very worried about her and didn't dare to close his eyes at all, afraid that something might happen to her or the baby. I congratulated her again, you found the right person. This is how a good man should be. She replied with a shy emoji, he's really good, but why hasn't he talked about getting married? He just said he wanted me to feel at ease about having the baby. He said he wants a son. I inwardly cursed him for being patriarchal but still replied, this is your first child. Boys and girls are both good. I put down my phone and didn't chat with her anymore. I thought of my husband. He had always wanted a son too. But I injured myself during childbirth with my daughter, and the doctor said it was very possible I wouldn't be able to get pregnant again. I still remember his look when he heard the news, a mix of despair, disgust, helplessness, and unwillingness, like a thorn that directly pierced my heart. But later, he said he had come to terms with it. He also said having a daughter was enough, and if we raised her well, she wouldn't be any worse than a son. My heart finally relaxed, and from then on, I worked hard to be a perfect wife, managing our family with care. When I got home at dawn, I found everything exactly as I had left it the night before. The steak and red wine on the dining table were untouched, and there were no signs of anyone having slept in the bed. Did Oliver not come home all night? His phone finally connected, his voice full of exhaustion. Sorry, honey. I worked overtime very late last night and just slept at the office. My phone was on silent, so I didn't get your calls. Is everything okay at home? Coco had a fever last night. Aunt and I stayed with her all night at the hospital. Is her fever gone now? Yeah, it's gone. We're home now. You must be tired. I need to go back and shower and change, then head back to the office. Can you handle it? Maybe take a day off. No need, I'll tell you when I get back. Maybe it was just my imagination, but when he came home, I thought I smelled the faint scent of hospital disinfectant on him. I instinctively asked, honey, were you really working overtime at the office last night? His back stiffened noticeably for a second, then he quickly regained his composure. Of course, it's true. Where else would I be? With a wave of his hand, he tossed his changed clothes into the laundry basket and walked directly into the shower. Listening to the sound of the running water, I suspiciously lifted my sleeve and sniffed. It turned out the smell was coming from me. It seems I really was confused from staying up all night. Aunt is off this weekend, I casually mentioned to him during breakfast. I'm taking Coco to the aquarium. Are you taking her by yourself? Of course, you don't trust me? My wife is so capable and beautiful. Isn't it normal for me to be a little worried? He said, peeling a boiled egg and placing it on the plate in front of me. I was a bit taken aback for a moment. This wasn't something he would usually say. I playfully teased him. So sweet talky. Did you do something you shouldn't have, and now you feel guilty? I saw his Adam's apple clearly move, and his face instantly turned pale. A bad feeling suddenly arose in me. But he quickly dispelled my doubts. What are you talking about? I'm so busy all the time, where would I have time to do anything wrong? You know this year is crucial for my promotion. I'm practically living at the office. Well, that was true. Oliver had always been a workaholic. I had never doubted that. He wiped his mouth casually and stood up. You take your time eating. I'm going back to the office for the morning meeting. Don't send Coco to kindergarten today, let her rest well at home. Okay, I've already asked the teacher for leave. Eat a bit more before you go. He waved his hand. No thanks, I'm full. With that, he quickly changed his shoes, grabbed his briefcase, and left the house. Oliver is working too hard, always busy, Aunt said, watching his retreating figure with a cleaning cloth in her hand. Ma'am, yesterday was your wedding anniversary. Didn't you remind him? Forget it. We're an old married couple, let's focus on our respective work. Although I said that, recalling Oliver's state just now, I still had a vague feeling that he was hiding something from me. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Maybe I was just being overly sensitive. The weekend arrived as expected. The aquarium was packed with people. My daughter skipped ahead, and I followed behind with the diaper bag, chasing after her. Slow down, slow down, slow down. I thought she would play for a long time, but halfway through, she said she was hungry and wanted pizza. So, I had to take her to a nearby mall. As fate would have it, I unexpectedly ran into Rose here. She was wearing a white dress, her hair neatly styled in a bun, and she had a very gentle aura. As for me, I was just wearing casual clothes because I was with my child. Compared to me, she actually looked younger. In reality, she was already 32. Grace. She walked towards me with a smiling face and squatted down to touch Coco's little pigtails. Sweetie, say, Auntie. Coco softly called out Auntie, and she dotingly pinched her nose. Good girl. It must be wonderful to have a daughter. I really envy you, Grace. Don't worry, I replied with a smile, you'll have one too. Perhaps it was due to the pregnancy, but I felt that her entire demeanor had changed. Indeed, love is like nurturing a flower. When you meet the right person, even if it's withered, it can be rehydrated and brought back to life. How are you feeling? I asked with concern. Still in the hospital for the pregnancy. Getting shots every day is awful, but seeing the numbers go up, I feel like all the hardship is worth it. Becoming a mother isn't that easy. This is just the first step of a long journey. Grace, she said somewhat sadly, actually, I was pregnant twice before, but both times. Her eyes suddenly turned red. I instantly understood and quickly comforted her. Don't bring up the past. Let's look forward now. Isn't your boyfriend treating you very well? This is like having endured hardship and finally reaching a better place. By the way, where's your boyfriend? Isn't he with you today? He went over there to take a call. Just as she was speaking, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she waved behind me. Honey, over here. I followed her gaze and looked behind me. My blood rushed to my head with a buzzing sound, and my vision instantly turned black. The person she called honey was none other than my husband, Oliver. How could he be? Could they? No, this is impossible, absolutely impossible. I froze in place, trying to stay calm, but my heart was pounding uncontrollably. Rose happily ran towards him, linked arms with him, and introduced me generously. Grace, this is my childhood friend I mentioned to you before, and my current boyfriend, Oliver. After saying that, she looked up at Oliver with a happy expression. Honey, this is my therapist, Grace, who pulled me back from the brink of death time after time. If it weren't for her, I don't know how many times I would have died by now. We really need to thank her properly. I managed a forced, extremely sarcastic smile and reached out my hand to him. Hello, Oliver, what a coincidence. He pulled away Rose's arm wrapped around his and stood there, pale as death and stunned. His soul seemed to have left his body. Rose saw that something was wrong and asked with a look of shock, You know each other? I nodded. Yeah, he's my husband. Daddy, why are you here? My daughter threw her arms around Oliver's leg, breaking the awkward silence between the three of us. Didn't Mommy say you went to save the world? Oliver finally came back to his senses, squatted down, and stroked his daughter's head. Daddy suddenly felt that it was more important to be with Coco and Mommy, so I rushed back. Be a good girl, Coco. Will you go play in the playground inside for a bit? Daddy will come play with you later. Okay. Coco said, kissing his face and bouncing away. Rose stared blankly at this scene, as if struck by lightning, even her fingertips trembling. After a long while, I asked her, Rose, are you okay? She nodded with difficulty. She steadied herself by holding onto the railing. Oliver proactively stood beside me. I instinctively took a step back, trying to get him to stand as much as possible between us. I didn't want Rose to think that in this situation, we were a couple confronting her, the third party. I still held on to a last shred of hope for her. Perhaps she didn't know Oliver was married and was simply deceived by him. You're married? She asked Oliver with a trembling voice, her face full of disbelief. Didn't you say you were a single older man in his 30s that no one wanted? Didn't you say you were too busy with work to date? Then what about Grace and Coco? As she spoke, large tears rolled down her face. Why did you lie to me, trick me into sleeping with you, trick me into getting pregnant? Why did you make me a shameful mistress? Why? Speak up, damn it, Oliver. She choked out the last sentence, practically screaming. But Oliver just lowered his head heavily, unable to say a single word. Fine, I accept it. It's not the first time I've been screwed over by a man anyway. She wiped away her tears with the back of her hand and said to me, I'm sorry, Grace, I need some time to process this. You two talk. I'll be leaving now. It was raining outside at the moment. The rumbling thunder kept triggering my nerves. Logically speaking, as a wife who had just learned that her husband was cheating, should hate the third party who intervened. But at this moment, I was worried about Rose. I knew her condition and what she had been through in recent years, so even with the facts in front of me, I still couldn't believe that she was a third party who destroyed someone else's family. At least, not intentionally. After she left, Oliver and I didn't speak for a long time. I just looked at him and suddenly felt like I didn't know him anymore. That meant every single day he claimed to be in meetings, working overtime, or on a business trip, he was busy dating Rose. And on our 5th wedding anniversary, the night our daughter was hospitalized with a fever, he was with her for her prenatal checkup. I remember Rose telling me at the time, tonight, he was a bit reckless. Thinking about how he had touched her like that, and how he shared our bed every night, my stomach suddenly churned. I rushed to the restroom and threw up all the breakfast I had eaten. Tears suddenly streamed down my face uncontrollably. When I returned, a voice in my heart told me that a certain phase of my life had completely ended, and the marriage I was so proud of was actually a joke. Well, I'll just throw it away. I don't want it anymore. Since Oliver's cheating was a given fact, no matter what his motive was, and whether he decided to return to the family or not, I would definitely divorce him. This was a matter of principle. I would not make any compromises. Once this was certain, other problems would be easier to deal with. We went to get pizza with our daughter Coco. We didn't say a word the whole way. After she finished eating, I let her play at the building blocks table. Only then did I finally speak. Oliver, Rose is pregnant. What are you planning? I'll have her get an abortion and break up with her completely, he interrupted before I finished. Honey, you have to believe me, I was set up by her. I don't know how she got pregnant, she always. He glanced at me guiltily. He didn't continue. Do you know she has severe depression? Yeah, she said her therapist saved her, and I didn't realize that person was you. She's suicidal. If something really happens, it will ruin my reputation in the industry. What? Did you forget? She's my client. That was true. Rose was also the most challenging client I had ever encountered. Her mental illness was much more severe than that of most people. If she hadn't persevered with treatment, she would probably be dead by now. Because of this, she was endlessly grateful to me and shared her treatment process and journey online. Our official account gained quite a few followers because of her. If something were to suddenly happen to her and it was exposed, would definitely receive negative reviews. You're still thinking about your work at a time like this? What else? You can't just replace a man whenever you want, but work will stay with me forever. Of course, work is more important. Grace, what do you mean? Are you going to replace me? Shouldn't I? He slumped down like a deflated balloon and after a long pause said, believe it or not, I never thought of divorcing you. I don't love her, I just wanted some excitement. I sneered, Oliver, do you think I'm interested in listening to your BS? Whether you thought about it or not, I'm divorcing you. There's no room for negotiation. If a steak is burnt, you throw it in the trash. It's the same with a man if he's dirty. My motto in life is that simple. Come on, sweetie, let's go home. I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words on him. I opened my arms towards my daughter and led her out by the hand. She kept turning her head, where's Daddy? Isn't he coming home with us? Daddy is still busy. Coco, wait for him at home, okay? Okay, goodbye Daddy. Oliver woodenly waved goodbye to Coco, forcing a smile that was uglier than a cry. I called Aunt at home to come back early and watch Coco. I changed my clothes and went straight to the lawyer's office. Since our confrontation, Oliver hadn't come home for many days and was staying directly at the office. He was also refusing to sign the divorce papers I sent him. We were completely at a stalemate. "Ma'am, there's something I don't know if I should tell you." One evening after my daughter had fallen asleep, Aunt suddenly came to my study. "What is it?" She took out a crumpled piece of paper that had been soaked in water. It was Rose's prenatal checkup report. "I found this in Oliver's suit jacket when I was doing the laundry." "Oh, this," my mind raced. "A female colleague borrowed his jacket last time it rained and put it there by mistake." "Ma'am, you should still be careful." "Actually, I've long noticed Oliver." "Aunt, it's getting late, you should rest early." After she left, I held the report and fell into deep thought. Rose found out she was pregnant the night my daughter was hospitalized with a fever, and Oliver was also there. If she had put the report in then, Aunt wouldn't have found it until today. Unless they had met again recently. But why would Rose do that? I already knew she was pregnant. Just as I was completely perplexed, I suddenly received a call from my assistant. "Sis, I went to Rose's cosmetics store to buy something today, and her employees said she seems to be hospitalized." "Which Rose?" "Our client, Rose." "Oh. Right. Did they say why she was hospitalized? Did she have a relapse and hurt herself, or?" "They didn't say specifically, but I just found a video online, and the woman in it looks a lot like her. I'll send it to you to watch." "Okay." After hanging up, I opened the video my assistant sent. The person in the video was indeed Rose. She was stopped on the street by several women who pushed, hit, and insulted her. They called her a serial mistress. How is this even possible? Is this the Rose I knew? Had she been a third party before? I immediately messaged the blogger and arranged to meet her the next day. According to her description, Rose's usual tactic was to first gain sympathy by portraying herself as pitiful and weak through her past experiences. Then once the man was completely hooked, she would find a way to appear in front of the wife, pretending to have been deceived by the man. Once the wife felt pity and didn't hold her responsible, she would intensify her efforts to force the man to divorce his wife and marry her, or give her a large sum of money to end things completely. What if the man doesn't agree? She snorted softly. If he doesn't agree, she'll threaten to kill herself, or say she's pregnant, or threaten the man's job, reputation, family, etc. In short, whatever they're afraid of, she'll do. After saying that, she shivered and remarked, "This woman is terrifying, she's simply a psychopath." Let me tell you, at first, I really believed her. I even thought she was deceived by my husband and felt a little sympathetic towards her. But then, I gradually stopped hearing what she said next. I thought of the night my daughter had a fever, and Rose suddenly appeared at the hospital. I thought of how she would always show off their relationship to me precisely when Oliver wasn't home. I thought of how she said she wanted to thank me and specifically suggested introducing her boyfriend to me. If she had known from the beginning that Oliver was my husband, then I had fallen into her trap from the very start. It was at this moment that I realized that a truly formidable opponent doesn't appear as an opponent. She can even make you completely unaware. And you lose everything in a daze, and still think she's innocent and pitiable. She was right. This woman was indeed terrifying. Thinking back on all the details of my interactions with her during this time, I got goosebumps. About 2 weeks later, Rose sent me a message over 1,000 words long, expressing her apology and guilt towards me, and also said, "I've had the abortion, and I've completely broken up with Oliver. Grace, I don't expect you to forgive me, I just hope your marriage and family won't be affected because of me. Please believe me, I only have gratitude for you." Seeing this, I felt nothing inside, and even felt like laughing a little. If it were before, maybe I would have actually believed it. I didn't reply to her, I just quietly screenshotted and saved this message for future use. In the evening, Oliver actually came home. He was dead drunk, dragged back by a few male colleagues from his department. One of them said to me somewhat awkwardly, "Sis, did you and Oliver fight recently?" He kept shouting while he was drunk that he wouldn't divorce. Another one also echoed, "Yeah, sis, Oliver has been drunk almost every day these past few days. We can't take it anymore." You should talk to him properly. I'm sorry, you guys, I apologized awkwardly. It's okay, sis, we're leaving now. Okay, goodbye. After seeing them off, Oliver's phone suddenly rang. It was a voice call from Rose. I instinctively hung up. She wouldn't give up and kept calling. I kept hanging up. After a few rounds, I simply unlocked his phone with his fingerprint to see what they had been talking about that made her so anxious. Oliver was careful, he had deleted all the previous chat history. Only a small part from tonight remained. Oliver, will you stop bothering me? No matter how you pressure me, I won't divorce. Rose, then what about me? Did you just use me? Oliver, you were willing to. Didn't you enjoy it? Rose, but I was pregnant with your child. You were the one who said you always wanted a son, and that your wife couldn't give birth, that she was basically useless. Oliver, you actually believed that nonsense just to get you into bed? So stupid. Rose, I don't care, you have to take full responsibility for me. Oliver, how? Rose, give me $500,000, or I'll tell your wife and cause a scene at your company. I have ways to ruin your reputation. Oliver, 500,000? Why don't you just rob a bank? Rose, not giving it? Don't you regret it? The conversation ended there. What did Rose mean by don't you regret it? How did she plan to deal with Oliver? To figure this out, I needed to know what Oliver's weakness was. His daughter? That was a given, but Rose liked children, so she wouldn't harm the child. His marriage? I already knew he was cheating, and he didn't agree to divorce, so I didn't have a plan for now. Then there was only his job. Yes, Oliver cared most about getting promoted. He was the most likely person in his company to be promoted from department manager to general manager. If his personal conduct became an issue now. Thinking this, I picked up his phone and provoked Rose. What the hell do I have to regret? The only thing I regret is meeting you. You think you can mess with me? I don't believe you dare to cause a scene at my company. Go ahead if you have the guts, preferably tomorrow. She replied instantly. What am I afraid of? I'm not even afraid of dying. You forced me to do this. Just wait. I didn't continue chatting with her. That was enough. I knew Rose's mental state very well. She couldn't handle any stimulation. The more you pushed her, the crazier she would become. When her emotions were out of control, there were only two possibilities. She would either harm herself or harm others. Originally, with her pregnancy, she could have taken a gamble, and Oliver might have divorced me to marry her. Now that the baby was gone and Oliver had turned his back on her, it was like pushing her to a dead end. So, anything she did out of line wouldn't be surprising. Except I guessed wrong. Rose didn't show up at Oliver's company the next day as expected. Until close to his quitting time, there was still no sign of her. Was she backing down, or had she changed tactics? My phone suddenly rang, forcing my thoughts back. Hey, Aunt, what's wrong? Ma'am, Coco is missing. She said, almost crying. The kindergarten teacher said a lady named Rose picked her up. What should we do? Nothing bad will happen to Coco, will it? What? I sprang up instantly, my entire body tensing. She said she was your friend and wanted to treat Coco to dinner. Coco knows her, so the teacher. My ears felt like they were ringing. I suddenly couldn't hear anything. By the time I reacted, I was already grabbing my car keys and rushing to the parking garage. During this time, I kept calling Rose. I called I don't know how many times. She finally answered. Where are you? Where is my daughter? Grace, don't worry, I won't hurt her, she chuckled darkly and continued. Didn't I say last time I wanted to treat you to a meal to thank you? But you wouldn't even give me a chance. So I had to take matters into my own hands and force you to come. Are you at the mall where we met last time? Yes. How is my daughter? Let her talk on the phone. Grace, that's a bit hurtful. Don't you trust me? Rose. Tears welled up in my eyes. Adult matters, deal with the adults. Please don't hurt the child. I'm begging you. What are you talking about? How could I hurt her? I like her too much. I couldn't tell the emotion in her voice, and I didn't know what she wanted, but I was completely falling apart from fear, and for a moment, I actually forgot to call Oliver. Mommy, my daughter Coco's voice suddenly came from the phone. Aunt Rose is treating me to pizza. When are you coming? Be good, Coco, Mommy will be there right away. Are you okay? Of course I'm okay. Aunt Rose is so nice, and she even gave me a gift. Okay, wait for Mommy. After confirming that my daughter was okay, my rationality returned a bit, and I called Oliver to inform him. But when I rushed to that pizza place, I didn't see them. Did Rose lie to me? I immediately found a server and asked to check the surveillance footage. The footage showed that 10 minutes earlier, Rose had walked out holding Coco's hand. Coco was holding a small rabbit doll in her arms, and the two of them were laughing and chatting happily. Where could they have gone in 10 minutes? Rose's phone was now unreachable. I suddenly had a bad feeling. Could she be? My heart seemed to skip a beat. I stood there in a daze, nearly collapsing. Fortunately, Oliver arrived just then and caught me in time. What happened? Where are they? I couldn't speak, just trembled and cried non-stop. Without a word, he picked up his phone and called the police. Just then, the people in the mall suddenly stirred, rushing towards the exit. I vaguely heard someone say, "Someone's going to jump." It looks like a mother and daughter. Oh my God. Are they crazy? Quick, let's go see. Oliver and I exchanged glances and rushed out. When I reached the rooftop, Rose was sitting on the railing with my daughter Coco in her arms. If she shifted even a little, they would fall. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. I yelled at her, my voice breaking, "Rose. Put Coco down." Coco was already crying from fear, repeatedly calling out for Mommy. My heart shattered. I pleaded, almost begging, "Let her down, and I'll come over, okay?" "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt her," she said calmly, looking at me. "I just wanted to talk to you. Grace, I'm so jealous of you. Look at you, you really have everything I want. A cute daughter, a driven husband, a successful career. You're also so pretty and rich, and most importantly, so kind-hearted." Saying this, she laughed self-deprecatingly, "But the more selflessly you save me and help me, the more I want to destroy you. Because you make me look so miserable." "You're not miserable, and you're not miserable," I tried to calm my emotions. "You're still young. You can live any kind of life you want." "I want your life, can I?" "Yes. I can divorce Oliver, and Oliver can marry you, as long as you don't hurt Coco." "Coco." She gently stroked Coco's small face, "If only she were my daughter." She mumbled to herself as if lost in a memory. I was pregnant 3 times in total, and all 3 times I was beaten and lost the babies. The first 2 times were by my ex-husband, and the 3rd time was by a stranger I met on the street. They said I stole their husbands. How ridiculous. They were the useless ones. "You're useless too." She suddenly looked at me and said triumphantly, "At least you lost to me briefly. Your husband once said he loved me very much." Actually, Oliver and I knew each other since childhood. If my mom hadn't sold me to that beast for 80,000 yuan as a bride price, maybe we would have gotten married. "Your life should have belonged to me all along." "I'll give it back to you," I said through tears. "As long as you let my daughter go, I can give everything back to you." "How?" "Oliver won't marry me at all. He was just lying to me." After saying that, she wiped away a tear with the back of her hand, then hugged Coco tightly and put her down. As Coco called out "Mommy" and ran towards me, she suddenly stood on the railing and loudly said to me, "I'm sorry. You saved me, but I wanted to ruin your family." Ultimately, I don't deserve to be saved by you, nor do I deserve to live. If there's a next life, I hope you don't meet me." After saying that, she turned, spread her arms, and jumped. I covered Coco's ears and instinctively let out a scream. "Idiot, have you watched too many TV shows?" Oliver's voice suddenly sounded behind me. "This is only the 4th floor, damn it. If you really want to die, find a building dozens of stories high to jump from." "If she hadn't put your daughter down, would you still say that?" He shut his mouth. He picked up Coco, his eyes full of heartache. It seems I was right to have him hide and not come out, otherwise, I don't know how he would have provoked her. I ran to the edge of the railing and looked down. She was indeed safely caught by the rescue equipment the firefighters had prepared in advance. She had already been put into an ambulance and taken away. Of course, Rose wouldn't die, after all, that mall only had 4 floors. But she suffered multiple fractures and abrasions all over her body and stayed in the hospital for a long time to recover. Because the jumping incident was so sensational and spread widely online, everyone quickly recognized her as the serial mistress who had been circulating online recently, and also a client of our therapy studio. In the past, she often shared her experiences and treatment process online and repeatedly expressed her gratitude to me. Now, she personally admitted that I saved her, yet she wanted to ruin me. This made her instantly famous. And I, along with our therapy studio, also became famous. Some people said she was a pitiable person, not a bad person. After all, she finally let go of the little girl and jumped herself. Suddenly, I felt a mess inside. Some people also said that she repaid kindness with enmity and took human evil to the extreme, and there was no need to whitewash her. Some also said she was just sick, her mental state uncontrollable and unstable, and hoped everyone would pay more attention to patients with depression and also more attention to women's difficulties in marriage. Most of these things were told to me by people at the studio. Because I temporarily didn't have time to pay attention to these things. I was busy with my divorce. Oliver initially disagreed until I asked him 3 questions. "Do you love your daughter?" He replied, "Of course I do." "Then do you hope that when your daughter grows up, she will marry a man like you?" He was silent for a moment, and finally replied, "No, I don't. But I married a man whom you wouldn't want your daughter to marry. Do you think I will be happy?" Before he could answer, I continued, "Oliver, whether or not to divorce is not up to you. If you don't agree, I will file a lawsuit. However, the longer we drag this out and the messier it gets, the worse it will be for our daughter. Think carefully." He was forced to sign. However, shortly after the divorce, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. During the time he was receiving treatment in the hospital, Rose publicly apologized to me online and then announced her retirement from the internet, traveling alone to Africa. Some say she went to do charity work, while others say she encountered unrest there and her fate is uncertain. There are also rumors that she married a local man and keeps having children. I am no longer interested in these things. I occasionally visit Oliver in the hospital, but most of the time, I am busy with work. Because the Rose incident caused such a stir, our studio ironically benefited from the misfortune, greatly increasing our visibility. More and more people came to me for counseling, and business got better and better. 3 years later, Oliver, who had been slowly getting better, had his cancer cells spread again. This time it was likely fatal, and there might be no hope for treatment. He was very accepting of this, saying it was his retribution. Perhaps. He originally had a great life, he could have been successfully promoted, had a loving marriage and a happy family, but he personally destroyed everything. He said that if he could be reborn, he wished he had never met Rose. I smiled. Even if Rose was toxic, wasn't he also not innocent? Just deceiving himself.